Too late for me to do this. It's too late. It's too late. It's too late. I want to tell you that you're wrong. God has given you the things that you need to keep pushing, to keep going, to keep striving, especially if it's the things of Him and His kingdom. And you feel like, I can't keep going. I don't know how I'm going to accomplish this. I don't know how I'm going to be able to get to that finish line. Then this is the word for you to keep going and to remind you that it is not too late. What's good, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Garden Room Podcast. I am so thankful that you're here. I'm hoping and praying you're having a great day wherever you're at listening to this episode. I am hoping that it just resonates with you somewhere inside, as we're going to be talking about a lot of different things today. But before we get started, my name is Mari, and this is a podcast all about growth, where we grow spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and even physically, where we're trying to keep reaching our goals, but ultimately to keep growing closer with Christ. And so I am so thankful that you're here, like I said, and we're going to just get right into today's topic. And today I want to talk about the idea that it's not too late. And if you feel like that has been something that has just been ringing in your mind, where you keep telling yourself, it's too late for me to do this, it's too late, it's too late, it's too late, I want to tell you that you're wrong. I want to tell you that God has given you the things that you need to keep pushing, to keep going, to keep striving, especially if it's the things of Him and His kingdom. And if He has given you a vision and a goal and a dream in your heart to do, and you feel like, I can't keep going, I don't know how I'm going to accomplish this, I don't know how I'm going to be able to get to that finish line, then this is the video for you. This is the episode for you. This is the word for you to keep going and to remind you that it is not too late. So I want to remind you of that. If it is something that gives God glory, if it is something that He has called you to go after, and it is something that is in your heart to do, then keep going after that with everything in you. Don't give up. Don't lose heart, and know that God will give you the strength to see it all the way through. And that goes into my first verse that I want us to talk about out of Philippians. We're going to be looking at Philippians chapter 1, and we're going to go through verse 3 through about 6. And it says, I thank my God every time I remember you. In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy, because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this, that He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. And that verse, you guys, is truly such a encouraging verse, but also such a grounding verse that helps us to realize that if God has decided to start a good work in you, then He will be the one to carry it out. And we can be confident in that. We can be confident in His word. We can be confident in what He has given us and what He set us out to do. And I truly feel like a lot of us are in this space where you think about running a race, or you're in the middle of a marathon, and maybe you feel like that person where you felt good when you got started, you felt like things were going, and now you were sitting in the middle of this mess, in the middle of this marathon, in the middle of this commitment, and you feel like, why did I decide to do this? What is going on? I don't think I can get to the finish line. I don't know how I'm supposed to be able to pick myself up in order to get to the end of where I need to be. I feel like I'm in the middle of having to make this decision of if I should finish and finish well. And I really want to encourage you that if God has given you what you needed to start, then He will give you what you need to finish. And that is something that we can hold on to while we're in the toughest point of our journey, while we're in the middle of the unknown, while we are trying to gain our strength back. And that goes into my first point of talking about relying on God. And if we want to get to where we're going, especially if it's somewhere where God has called us to go, then we have to rely on God. That is not even something that's up for discussion or negotiation. It is a true fact. We have to rely on God, and we have to lean on Him. We can't lean on our own understanding. We can't lean on our own intelligence and our own capabilities, our own strength, our own just even goals and motivation. We have to lean on God and God alone. We lean and rely on God, then that just brings us to a deeper level of trust in Him through and through. And that is something that is such a gift. Even though it can be hard, even though it can be challenging, then we really are able to grow a deeper foundation in who we are in Christ and who we know Him to be when we really take the step back and say, God, I need you in this moment, so I'm going to rely on you. And that brings me to my second point, you guys. As we're learning to rely and lean and trust on God, then I want to encourage you, do not turn around. Don't turn around. Don't go back. Don't say, I can't do this anymore. I am trying to go back to what's comfortable. I'm trying to go back to what I know. There's no need for me to push forward. I'm not going to make it. No, do not turn around. Don't turn around for where God is leading you. Don't turn around trying to go back to what you feel like is going to be just the easier option, because it is. It's going to be the easier option, but it is not going to bring you to the place where God has for you. And trust me, I know that mentality can be so easy to sink into when you're in the middle of trying to move forward, but all you really want to do, all that your mind is telling you you can do, all your body is telling you that you're capable of, is to just turn back around, is just to go back. And it reminds me of the children of Israel, where God has brought them through so many things to release them out of captivity, to be able to restore to them their freedom. And they are reaching towards the promised land. They're reaching towards the promise. They are walking with him in his presence day and night. And here they are in the middle of their marathon, saying, we just need to turn back around. And I want to read you guys just a short passage from that. We're going to be looking at Exodus chapter 16. And I'm going to go through verse 2 through 4. But I highly encourage you guys to kind of keep on reading, because it is so good. But it says, in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are going to go out each day and gather enough for that day. And this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. And you guys, this just passage and just this event that took place, where these people were in the middle of what they were trying to work through, but they were grumbling and complaining and really just not able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, the finish line, the end of the picture, and what they were working towards, or what God had them moving towards. All they could think about was their distress and what they were going through in that moment. And honestly, you see that God understands that. In the midst of their grumbling, he has so much grace for them. And I can't speak for God, but I know for myself, I think if I would have brought somebody through all these different things, given them all this stuff, done all these miraculous miracles, parted the Red Sea to help them escape from their enemies, it's just hard to think about, how do you not trust that I'm going to bring you through and get you to where I told you we're going to go? However, in that moment, you still see God, even though it says like later on, he is, angered by the people's heart of complaining and not being able to really trust in what he's doing. But you still see his grace. He still understands that, you know what? I know that these people are going through it. And so I'm going to give them what they need to keep going after what I have promised them to do. And so I really want to encourage you that if you feel like you're in that moment of turning back, and maybe you just feel like, I just can't do this anymore. I can't deal with this situation anymore. I can't go after this anymore. I can't deal with this person anymore. I don't know. I just can't do it. If complaining is all that is coming out of your mouth, I still want to encourage you, even though complaining is not good, even though it seems like it's so much easier to pick a different option, to keep moving forward and to know that God even gives grace. Even in the midst of our grumbling, it is not something that pleases him. However, these people still got bread from heaven in the middle of the desert, in the middle of their wilderness, and they saw God's hand just stretch out over them in so many incredible, miraculous ways. And so I really want you guys to think about that and to not just cut your blessings short. And also in the midst of asking God for different things, we have to have a heart of gratitude and learning to just trust him and learning to just ask and knowing that he is a God who is generous and he'll give us what we need when we need it. But with that, I really want us to just think about our mindset when we are approaching different things, and that God really does understand, but it does not give us the excuse to stop and turn around. And also in reading that passage, I just kind of think about the idea of if they would have turned around. Like, I know that it took them so much more time than even what it was supposed to, because of all the different times they stopped, started. But if they never would have kept going, their future generations, their children's children would have not been able to see what God had promised them. They would have just ran back to what was comfortable. And what was comfortable for them was captivity. And some of us don't even know that we are in captivity when we are just staying and living in places that just feel good all the time. We have no idea what God has even for us when we just live in this comfortable place that we just don't want to grow in. And I think a lot of that is something that the enemy may want us to just be okay with. He wants us to be passive where God is calling us to be proactive. And so I want to just remind you and tell you, don't let the promise pass you by. And I don't just mean the promise of, for them, yes, it was a promised land, a place that God had really just prepared for them to be and to glorify his name and to be free and just to really show the other nations his glory and all that he has brought them through as his children and his people. And that is such an amazing thing. But I also want to just show you as well that the promise lies in his presence. It's not just in this whole prosperity side of things where God will give you all this stuff if you follow after him. No, the promise and the beauty of all of that is when we are close to his presence. And that is the whole point of what we are doing, what we're going after. Because the things that God has given you, you probably cannot go after that on your own strength. Like, I know for me, there's things that maybe God has put in my heart to do, or just dreams and ideas where I'm like, there is no way I can get that done without God. I could barely even get done the things that seem like easy day-to-day whatever, because the more you are close to God, the more you realize this is all about him. This has nothing to do with me. And I'm grateful for what God has given me the capability to do, but I also am grateful for the things that he has allowed me to see. I can't do any of this without his strength and without his help. And it is such a great and beautiful thing, as I've talked about in different episodes, to depend on God, to depend on a Father who loves you, to depend on a Savior who is so much stronger than you. And it is such a sweet place to be, to follow after him like that. And knowing that he will give me the strength, knowing that he will give me the hope and the joy and the confidence that I need to keep pushing through to his promise and into his presence. And so just keep that in mind, to not let the promise pass you by, to not just stay in a place of comfortability or captivity, but to really trust and rely on Christ as you work towards the thing that he has for you, and to not turn back around, but to keep going after what God is doing in and through you. And that brings me to my third and final point, you guys, and that's to finish strong. And I know that just sounds like such a simple thing, but it is a hard thing to do, to finish strong when it feels like you don't have any mental capacity, you don't have any physical strength, you don't have any emotional strength, but there is something that God will do inside your spirit to stand up and say, you know what, even if I have to crawl, even if I have to go on my hands and knees to get there, I'm going to cross that finish line. I'm going to get to that point. I'm going to get to the top of that mountain where God has told me that he will be able to help me to reach that goal, to reach that thing that he has promised me. I'm going to get there and I'm going to finish strong. It may not be in every other area, but spiritually, somewhere deep down in my spirit, I'm going to have the same motivation, the same passion, the same energy, and the same strength to know that God brought me through this, and what he started in me at the very beginning of this journey, it is going to be the same God who brings me through at the very end. And so I really want you guys to grab hold of that, have that type of spirit. Even if you look at yourself and you're like, this is not how we looked when we first got started, it looks like I've been through the trenches. And no matter if that is just something that you are having to face, whether it's in your job, in your friendships, in your relationships, in whatever situation that you feel like you have been having to go through so much, and you maybe feel like you've had to stop and start and wait and be patient and work hard and all these different things where you're like, I think that I am not able to really get to this last point. You are almost there. And I don't know who needs to honestly hear that, but you're almost there. Finish strong. Don't give up on the last leg. Keep pushing, keep going, and knowing that when you're in that position of saying, I don't really have anything left to give, I know I'm not running at the same pace as I started, sometimes it is such a sweet spot of surrender to say, this is it. I'm barely crawling. I'm barely making it through. But barely doing something is better than doing nothing at all. And when we're in that space of humility, of submission, of saying, God, I'm gonna just need you to honestly really help me to walk through this, to be able to finish spiritually, then that is such an amazing moment to see where God really can come through, and he really will give you all that you need. And you recognize that I am so weak, God. This is where I'm at. This is all I can give you. Then you see, as it talks about in the scriptures, where we're weak, he is strong, and we get to boast in that. And when we get to stand up and we get to that point and we look around and we're like, man, God actually brought me through this. God actually brought me to the point that he told me we were going to be at. God actually allowed this to take place. Then all you can do is raise your hands and give God glory, because you know it wasn't you, but you know that you also gave God everything that you had. And that is such a beautiful place of promise and accomplishment, and honestly a gift that we get to experience when we're walking hand in hand with Christ. And before we wrap up this episode, I want to challenge you guys with something that I'm also doing for the first time throughout this week, and we can all do it together. But write out a couple goals. And I know I've talked about that before, but I want us to write out some specific goals that really just kind of hit on the things that maybe you feel like God has put in your heart to do, and the things that even God has just called you to do in terms of sharing the gospel and being a light to other people. But write out some goals for just the one thing that you are looking towards improving for this week, and write out a spiritual goal, an emotional goal, a mental goal, and even a physical goal. And it can be something that is so small, like spiritually, if you feel like I need to just increase my prayer life, it doesn't have to be 20 minutes. It could be 2 minutes. Just write out a goal. I'm going to pray 2 minutes every morning, every evening, every night. And maybe for some of you, like, oh, I do that all the time. Well, maybe pray for 20 minutes, or maybe see where God has you somewhere in that range, just to challenge yourself to say, okay, I know that I need God's help in this area. So I want to grow spiritually to keep me going towards the thing that God is just calling me to do. So pray about that thing for 2 minutes, and maybe physically set an alarm 5 minutes earlier where you know, okay, I need to write out these things in order to accomplish this thing that God has given me to do. So wake up 5 minutes earlier, or go to bed 5 minutes later, and spend that time brainstorming on ideas, finding different ways, reading up on different things, researching different things, whatever you need to do. Spend 5 minutes doing that thing for that goal. And then maybe if it's emotionally, maybe you feel like, okay, I am struggling trying to have joy. Instead of maybe listening to some of the artists that you always listen to, or listening to some of the songs that kind of just feed into maybe some of that sadness and don't really produce joy, then supplement that with worship music, supplement that with some uplifting things, whatever it is for you, whether it's, like I said, emotionally, mentally, physically, but spiritually especially. Write out something that is going to help you improve just by 1% every day. And reassess those goals at the end of the week. If you need to do them again the next week. If you need to up your goals and kind of change it out and say, okay, instead of 5 minutes, I want to do 10 minutes. Switch it out, but pray and ask God to help you to do some practical things that are really going to help you to say, okay, I am going to keep going in this, even if I don't feel like it, even if I don't see the finish line, even if I don't fully understand what is going on in this moment, in the middle of my marathon, in the middle of my journey. I'm going to trust God. I'm going to hold on to him, and I'm going to find a way to keep moving forward, because it is not too late to do the things that God has called you to do. And if God has called you to it, he will see you all the way through it. And so whatever it is that you've been holding on to, that maybe has been tucked away deep inside of your heart, you feel like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but you know that God has given you that thing to go after. Go after it with everything inside of you, and know that I'm cheering you on. I'm praying for you guys. I'm right there with you, and that we're going to be able to accomplish this together. We're going to be able to see the finish line together. I know it might be at different paces, but God is right there in the midst of every single thing that you're walking through. And so with that, you guys, I'm going to close out today's episode. Know that I am, like I said, I'm praying for you guys. I am always here for you, cheering you on. Please reach out with any prayer requests, anything that you have in your heart heart that you want to share with me or want to encourage with someone else in the comments, please do so. I want us to all keep growing together. I'm so grateful for just this TGR community and just for the space of growth. And so I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And until the next episode, as always, keep growing with God. Bye, guys.